What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Event Marketing Redefined. I am your host, Matt Kleinrock, CEO of Rockway Exhibits and Events, and Mollie Stahl is back. Mollie, welcome back.
Thanks, Matt. It's been a while.
It's been a while, but you are back for good reason, because we did an episode back in the day, do's and don'ts of RFPs for trade show event work. And it's our most downloaded episode. We got a lot of notes, questions, feedback from people listening on that episode. So we've decided to do a little bit of a part 2 on this episode. So not so much a do's and don't episode. We're going to talk about how we think somebody should go out to RFP. We said what we don't think people should do. We did put some do's in there, but I think we're going to kind of talk a little bit here about rethinking RFPs so you can go get the best results. You ready?
I'm ready. Yeah, I'm excited to dive in.
All right. Let's do it. So my first thought, just to get us kicked off, is this. I think the question everybody has to start asking themselves is, what is an RFP for, right? It is a request for proposal, which is just kind of like the acronym for it. But essentially, someone going out to RFP is looking for a new partner. And they're looking for a new partner to do a few things. I would say, one, solve problems for them, solve a problem. Typically, they're looking for better results, or they're just upset with their current partner and they need somebody new. So just starting from that foundation, that is what an RFP is, because they've taken this form of being this kind of big, hairy monster of a thing that people don't like to look at, people don't like to create. And I think we kind of have to start there, which is what is an RFP? And then that leads me to think to myself, well, if you're trying to get a new partner to solve a problem, get results, what then has to happen, right? You like anything else, you have to reverse engineer it. So what do we have to do? You field more RFPs than I do, right? You're the one fielding them, and you're the one talking to customers and going back and forth. Kick us off here. I mean, what are you thinking when you sort of get RFPs and you start conversing back and forth?
Yeah. And I think it's interesting too, because RFPs, when you hear that right away, everyone thinks like a big, long document, right? And most of the time, if someone's going out to an RFP, right, it's how official is it? Every business, every company is very different. So you get an RFP that's maybe just something that they typed in an email that they need. It's like a 1-pager, or some I've seen that are 20 pages, right? It all is different based on the company, but all of them pretty much follow the same guidelines, right? What do they need? What you kind of just went over, but a little bit more detail is, what do they need, what they're looking for, and then how soon they're looking for it, right? So that's all, it's inside of the RFPs. And so everyone can be a little bit different when they're running it, but it's basically the same thing.
Yeah, I think some of the ones we've seen in the past, they are too long. They're asking for too many bidders, right? I mean, that's what the previous episode is about. And we talked about all the problems with a standard RFP. I think what I would be challenging people to think is kind of in a way, fuck the RFP. Why do you have to do it the way it's always been done? Right? Why challenge the status quo on things? Everybody's just so used to just doing things the way that things have always been done. But I was thinking about it earlier, and my thought process is okay, the reason why you have a typical RFP and it gets built out and it's 8, 10, 12, 15, 20 pages, and it goes out to 20 people, it's with the hopes that 10, 12 will respond, and then 6 or 5 will bid, and then you narrow it down. But I think the big difference now is the internet, the information. The information at the fingertips of everybody has drastically changed in the last 10 years. In the last 10, only the last 10. So with the sort of aging and development of the internet. So the question then becomes, why are you sending an RFP to 15, 20 companies? You don't need to anymore. You can do your research. You can do your homework. Everything's out there. And so that would be my first question, is challenging that RFP to say there's a good example of the reason that they were the way that they were and you had to get X amount of bidders is because the information wasn't there, but now it is there. So why would you send an RFP to 15 people when you could research 5 really well, dial it in, get it down to 5, and send them an email saying, hey, we've done our homework. We've looked around. We think you're a fit because of A, B, and C. We want you to bid on this. It's got 5 people. That to me would draw a way better response than what the conventional does.
Right. No, and I agree with that too. And, these people are going to trade shows often, right? I mean, I hear it from our clients all the time that they're saying, oh yeah, a lot of people came up to our booth and asked who built the booth, right? So other exhibitors are not afraid to go up to other exhibitors and ask them, hey, great design, like give them a compliment and be like, and then they're like, who did your booth, right? So we've gotten clients from someone just doing that on the show floor. And then, like I said, people go up to our clients all the time. So these people are educated. They know who kind of does good work. They, kind of there's a buzz around the show floor. And then, like you said, the internet. I think that's a great point about you couldn't use the internet before, right? It was just kind of like word of mouth. You couldn't really see stuff or reviews or anything like that. So you can do it. It takes a while to put something together, right? And I think like you're saying, challenging it, and it doesn't need to be the same. And like I said earlier, like everyone still is really not doing then the same. They're just same information, right? You could Google how to set up an RFP and you'll get so many different hits, but they all say summary. They're all around the same thing, but now they're doing similar stuff, but just make it your own. What do you need? And I think a good point to like start, like when you challenge it is before even going out to bid is like, okay, why are we going out to an RFP, right? Like look internally about what you guys are doing right now. Do you have somebody that you're currently working with? And if there's one of those third choices that you had said, you're just unhappy with your current person, list them out. How realistic are they? Was it one show? Is it multiple points? Have you had conversations with them, right? Like, is it really not fixable? And if it's not, that's totally okay. Go out to RFP and then make sure that you understand why you're going out there, right? What are your main core areas that you need to be resolved and that you need to hear trigger points from people that they're saying these words back to you that you're going to continue conversations with, like 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah. I think why you're doing something always matters, right? So to the point, say you're going because you want a new partner because you're unhappy with your current. Odds are you have been around other companies on the show floor, asked, you've seen other people's work. You may not need to go to RFP. You may have 2 companies in the back of your mind already. And then I think it's just saying, okay, let's go do a little bit of research. We've seen their work on the floor. We've talked to other exhibitors who work with them, and it becomes much more simpler. But if, say, starting with why for somebody, their why is that they feel like they're not getting top tier design work and they are not being experiential enough in this space. That's a why, right? They're working with a partner that they feel like creatively can't get them to where they want to be, or that there's more out there. And then B, they feel like experientially they're not doing enough inside of this booth space. So for somebody there, that why now should drive the entire RFP in terms of who you're looking for, in terms of conversations you have. For example, if you start talking to companies and you end up never talking to a creative director, they're just talking to Mollie, the AE, right? They're not talking to a creative director. Wouldn't you want to talk to a creative director if that's your biggest problem, if that's your headache, if that's why you're making a switch? So those are little details that if you have a why and you're focused on making change, which is what an RFP can bring, is you're then looking for certain elements. Because a person like you could say, oh yeah, we have great design. Oh, it's the best. Yeah. Oh yeah. No, 100%. Sure. Any salesperson can say it. But when they say, hey, you know what? Let me get you on the phone with our creative director. Why don't you all talk? Why don't you have a conversation? Why don't you tell them where you're missing or what you're looking for and get their thoughts? So I love what you're saying about kind of starting with a why. Is there anything else outside of why that maybe you think somebody should be thinking about when they are going out to RFP?
Yeah, I think it's knowing like your internal process too, right? Like once you have selected how many other people, right? You got it. You're in the process with them talking about design. You've gone through that. So what does like your internal process look like internally, right? So like once you get 3 or 4 designs back, what do you need to go do? And I think you need to understand this before you get all the bids out, right? So kind of starting from the backwards, right? So like, is it just you, no matter like, if you're a specialist or an associate, right? Or you're not a manager or you are a manager, who else do you have to show? Who has to get these approvals, right? And sometimes I think it's fine if you're just working with like, say you're just working with an event manager, right? And they have like an event director or a VP, time, we all understand like, time is important. So not wasting too much time with people. So like, what does that process look like though? Like if your director needs to be involved and you're just going to show them 4 designs, take off the logos, and they're going to choose which one is the best. For me, I just don't personally think that you're going to get the best results by doing that, right? So what you just said is like, you're vetting, you're doing all of this work and design. It's all about the process. Like you mentioned, who's taking you through what process?
Yeah.
Like if your biggest pain point is need to be more experiential, or you want something more eye catching, or whatever it is, it's very design focused. And two people had you a creative director on their call and two other companies didn't. What the process is going to be different, right? Like you're going to be geared towards somebody. So like for me, I think doing like the panel that's not involved is fine, right? Because you can have a voice that you're going back to, but it's if you're taking off the logos and you're only having them choose on design. I think design can be very subjective, right? One person could like one thing, the other person doesn't like one thing. But I also think you need to come forth and say, hey, that's great. We can choose from these designs, but like I like one the best because of the communication and the touch points and references, the pictures that they've sent me. There's a lot more that comes from it with design, and going back and talking them through, hey, we like somebody else's design, but we really like you guys. Like you could eventually get there. If they're a pretty good company, they should have a good creative team. They can get you to what you need to. You just have to talk through it with them. So that's one of my other things, like a big internal, how are you going about it? Make sure that you feel comfortable. I mean, it's pretty much like the event marketers, ass on the line at the end of the day. So make sure that you're choosing the right company that you feel comfortable with, that can deliver and produce, and not honestly solely just choosing on design, because design can be changed.
I think like three things that you touched on there. Like one is if you are the person taking your company out to RFP, if you're in control of it, you have to know your company's internal process. So that means you got to talk to your stakeholders, because you're always going back to stakeholders. The stakeholders are never the ones going to RFP, right? So if you're an event marketer and you are going out to RFP, you should go to your stakeholders and say, hey, what do you guys want this to look like? What is our internal process? How much information do I get up front? How many people do I bring back to you? How are you going to want to decide, right? Because to your point, the other thing you talked about is this decision by committee, which happens all the time. And I agree with you. I think it's a trash way of doing things, right? It is, hey, you have a entry level or an associate or a marketer or whoever's been tasked with this to go get 5 designs from 5 trade show companies for a new booth or a new partner. They're then taking those, they're showing these stakeholders, sometimes not, almost all times, they're not all in the same office. It's being sent separately, or it's being given as a presentation. Hey, here's the 5 designs we have. And they're voting, like literally voting. Like everybody will just vote on one. And then whichever one wins, there are companies that go do that. That to me is crazy, but it happens way more than you think. And I think it deprioritizes what truly matters in the process, which is, and I'm a firm believer as somebody, right? I own our company, and people sell me stuff as a business owner all the time. When you're selling me, your process matters to me. Your process matters. How you take me through a process. RFPs, when you want to do it your way, right? Like if we were going out for IT services, I had to go get IT quotes. If I sent this RFP and I tried to control the process of it, I'm never going to allow a better IT company to take me through a better process. They might give me better pricing, sure. But am I looking for pricing? Is that what I want? Do I want cheaper IT service? I might not. I might want better IT service, right? Or I might, like I said, it goes back to the problem that you have. So I think those things you touched on, know your internal process, talk to your stakeholders. 2, you should allow these companies to take you through a process, not you take them through a process and make them dance to give you something where you go make a decision on. And the committee by design is the committee choosing is very difficult. It's subjective. And I think it eliminates what really matters when you're looking for a good partner and you're trying to get your problem solved. It becomes impersonal as well. And I don't think it really hits the nail on the head.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny too about what made me think of something when you were talking about the communication and the process. One of the biggest things that I hear often is like the lack of communication. Why some people end up leaving, right? Is like, oh, I can never get a hold of my exhibit house, or communication's been bad. It takes a while for them to get back. It's like key elements during the process of working with somebody new. How fast do they get back to you? Are they updating you when they say they're going to? Or are they telling you, hey, I'm a little bit delayed? Like how often? Because most of the time that's how they're going to be working with you from start to finish, or maybe that's how the company's going to be, right? If it's on point and you're like, okay, great, this person, like, I really feel like they're taking care of me. they're listening to me, they're getting back on time when they said that they're going to. It just makes you feel good, right? When you're not hearing from somebody, you're waiting on something. And then that's a company that gets chosen, right? It's all about, I think, that upfront communication in the process. So, and understanding, right? Like what your core need is, right? It may be like a more lightweight build. So you don't have heavy material handling. That's important, right? Then you need to ask different companies about what that looks like. If it's an engagement, right? You need to really hone on that. How versed are they in that? What's their capabilities like? So it's all about what are your areas of concern to start with, and make sure that feel like you're getting hit and heard from.
I even think, and honestly, this could be like it's a super unpopular opinion, but I know in an RFP, you're supposed to spill everything that you're looking to solve and what you want. Oh, our material handling, we want to lower the cost, like you had just mentioned.
Yeah.
I think I go back to the process. If you are a trade show company and you're spending $2, $3, $4, $5, $6, $700,000, $1 million, whatever it is, and you go out to RFP, and one of your biggest problems is that your trade show booth is a big lunk of crap, and your material handling is crazy expensive because it's a bit of an older school booth. You can't get the crate sizes down. Your shipping is expensive. Your material handling is expensive. It is our job to figure that out in the process, not for you to tell me up front in an RFP. If you come to 6 companies and tell them nothing and just say, hey, we're looking for new vendors, we're unhappy with our current, let's start, take me through. If the person you're working with never uncovers that you are upset at your old custom heavy, big weighted booth, and they're going to try to sell you more of the same, they are a shit company. They're the wrong company to work with. They're going to take you. It's like an easy elimination. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if they're not going to you, hey, Maria, like, what is your biggest concern moving forward with your trade show program? Like, don't just start designing me a booth. Don't tell me what you think. Oh, hey, you guys are a food product company, and oh, I would do this and I would sell you this. That's a shit process. A good process is, what are you worried about? What are you trying to accomplish? Why are you worried about that? Hey, like, okay, so if we're focused on material handling, if we're focused on drayage, if we're focusing on, we're focusing on size, give you another step of what a good company would do to have that process they take you through, identify what makes people better and difference you could disseminate between companies, is how about them laying out your options and saying, hey, you can go real extreme. This is what it looks like. You could be super lightweight. You have all, you know what I mean? You could have less trucking. Here's the middle ground. Here's your option. That's a good process, So I think that's probably my biggest pet peeve with RFPs, is that it's the buyer controlling the entire process and wanting to take everybody through the same thing. And I mentioned this to you earlier, is like, why are you controlling the playing field? Why? Sports have rules, sure, have rules, but like, it's not fair. If somebody outworks or is just better than the other person, they're going to win. And I think sometimes in RFPs, it puts too much in a box. So on the end of my rant there, I think what I'm telling people, because I think we want to tell people how we would do RFPs, is let's go back to that. Let's say you and I were let's be a SaaS technology company. And we're going to go to a couple trade shows this year. And you and I we're going to, build out an RFP. We're going to start with what you said originally, the why, right? Why are we going to RFP? What's the next thing we're going to do once we've established a why as we're building out our RFP?
Right. I mean, if you've been, in the industry a while, which we just maybe never have exhibited before, I would start thinking about who else do I know in the industry that I could call and see who did their trade show booth. Like I said, like we talked about earlier, you're on the show, people, you see a good booth, you know what that looks like when your eye goes to it. And then if you don't know anybody,
in the industry, people have contacts. Yep. It's a great point.
LinkedIn. I mean, you could just shoot them a message. Hey, I saw your booth at the show last year too. I mean, it's not, uncommon for people to do that. So kind of like start with your network and then, research, right? Do it. Like what, and then think about, or no, before that, you would think about exactly, right, like your why. What are you doing? What do we need people to hit on? And then I think you kind of, reach out to a couple of people that you really want to. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, like time is important, right? And time is valuable. So like it takes a while to put out an RFP, no matter what it is, short, small, big conversations. It takes like energy. It takes time. You're answering questions to multiple people. So like you want to make sure that you're being selective and smart on who you're talking to, because you have to put the time in to this to get the right results back. So like if you're not, don't want to have all these conversations, and only reach out to 2 people, right? But just be prepared, have the time, what's coming up, any other projects to really vet people out. And so I think that's what we would do with starting out. And then, I mean, I love your idea of like not giving away everything, right? Making people, you could ask them,
figure it out.
What does your booth bill look like? You could ask different companies key questions that tie back to answers you're trying to get from them, right? If it is, how do you handle engagement? If they're not asking you right away, you could pry them with some questions. And if they just don't give you anything, like you said, it's an easy elimination.
I think you have to, on that point, you have to make them take you through their process. And I think that helps you decipher who's who's better, who's going to help me achieve my goals, who gives me the warm and fuzzy, who do I want to work with, who do I like, who do I dislike? I mean, the other thing I would encourage people to do in this process, like I said, if it was you and I doing it, part of RFPs and the purpose of them is like, okay, you need procurement involved at some companies. Sometimes procurement runs it, which is even more crazy if you want to talk about not getting results, but just, crunching numbers. But I would encourage and say part of the process should be going to stakeholders, whoever's involved. So you have procurement, maybe your upper level management in marketing, maybe the CEO's involved. Maybe you're at the size of a company where the CEO is going to be almost always a stakeholder in that situation, head of sales, go to market, whatever it is. And I'm asking them, what do you want from this process? What is most important here? Yeah. So procurement may say one thing, because then I think, well, based on what they say, you have to decide when you're going to bring them into and get involved in the process. Same for marketing, head of marketing, VP of sales. What does everybody want? And I think it's your job then, if you're trying to go, again, the point of an RFP is to go get better results, solve a problem, get a better partner. So you as the conduit, the gatherer of all that, you have to figure out what stakeholders want. I would go get them, and I would really get outside of the why. Cool, let's create a why. But now, what do each of you want? What do you want to be involved in? What don't you want to be involved in? Because you can't have a circus where you're just bringing everything back to everybody and just showing it, going back, showing it, going back, showing it. That just becomes a circus, because then emotions hit, things change, people are out of the loop. I would encourage that as well in this process.
Yeah, I think that's great.
So what would be next for you if that, we're talking about creating a why. You know what I mean? We're talking about talking and channeling with your stakeholders. You had spoke prior me, and you were talking about kind of the research and how you're finding these companies that you want to engage with. What else would we be doing to put out a really good RFP?
Yeah, you would, after that, vetting, making sure that, the companies are in line with it, right? You talked earlier, like who's getting on the calls. I think it depends on like what your program is, your project size, everything like that. But just going through the motions with the companies, right? Getting on calls, getting designs back, getting, sketches, or just, different touch points with them. I think that would be obviously the very next basic steps.
You have to have touch points.
Right.
Yes. How many people don't have touch points? How many people say, hey, email me. Hey, I don't want to get on a call. Or how about the group call thing? How about that? How about that circus, right? Yeah. You have a company that says, hey, everybody log into a Zoom call. We'll answer questions like it's a town hall or something. Yeah. It's crazy to me. Absolutely. Everybody's going to hear the same questions, and everyone's going to hear what everyone's asking. Yeah. Talk about not being able, how do you differentiate between who you're working with? In anything you RFP, there are good companies. There are great companies. There are crappy companies. And if you control that process that way, tough to tell who's who.
Yeah, no, I agree. Especially because you don't know, like some of the people you don't know, some of the client companies that you may have talked with before, right? And then everyone's just sending you one thing, and you just, I don't even know how you read more than 10 of them. It's multiple, some of them ask for like 20 pages. So it's, I don't, how much are they going through, remembering one? Or they just, it's, stacking them. No, yes, no, you're not even giving that touch point. Sometimes I think like I said, time, it's valuable. So make sure that you're not wasting your own time too.
I would be asking, of course, I know people do this sometimes, and sometimes people don't. In a way, I'm asking for like a reference. Send me 3 of your clients and send me the portfolio of work that you did for them.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit of a story about it and give me the contact. Let me go talk to them. You know, I mean, I think that's important. Yes, you're typically going to get their best clients and people that love them. But also, if you're smart about it and you're really looking for a good partner, it's like when you're hiring and you get a reference from somebody, the reference they give you is going to be good. Yeah. So you can't just be like, hey, do you like this person? Of course they like this person, right? They sent them to you, of course. So you have to ask better questions. What are they like? You know what I mean? What were they like to work with? What was your biggest frustration with them? What's something that might surprise them about us, right? So like, I think you have to navigate that. Like those references are important. Nobody's perfect, but I think you're looking for key answers and things back that say, oh, wow, that really syncs up with what we're looking for. They seem to be, if your past exhibit house, you had problems with, communication and it gives you a headache and you're worried about it. Well, if you're talking to someone that says over and over how great they are with communication, they're on top of stuff. God, that's a great sign. I would be doing that.
Yeah. There's one interesting thing too, that what I would be doing is, always have like your list of like what you need, right? Making sure that you fully understand what the company does. For example, I had somebody, I was talking to them the other day. They didn't really put together like a formal RFP, but they were looking for a new company. And when I eventually talked to them, they said, they were like, honestly, like straight up, Mollie, like we kind of messed up in our process. They said like the people, like we have a design that we really like. It's not all the way there yet, but we have spent time and money, like we paid to get this design done. And then they were like, we just got design happy. And then these people, we don't feel comfortable or confident that they can build this out and execute all of our trade shows. They do like 20 shows that are 20 by 20 bigger, and then they do a bunch of smaller stuff, right? So they are doing a lot. This is like a big trade show program, but big trade show program. They've been around the block. They know what they're doing at trade shows. And they got in a position where they got stuck, where they got design happy. And then they're reaching back out to people because they feel like they are not confident in who they've reached out to. And that, they basically said like, we wish we did more research and found, we might have not been down this path with design because now they can't build it for us. And we're not confident that they can store and do all the logistics up to our standards. So that was interesting. So making sure that you do fully understand it. Cause like I said earlier, and we've been saying like, you can get happy over design, but like that is just on a piece of paper. It's on a computer. That's not what the real thing will look like. So making sure you fully understand and ask questions if you're confused.
I think that's a great example, right? Because they kind of were like, man, we just got too deep into this with them, right? And we're not comfortable. We don't have warm and fuzzy. And I think for what you're saying, like, look, having been in this industry for a while now, I understand the importance of creativity. I understand the importance of design, but design is subjective. Yeah. It's emotional. I've had jobs way back where I was selling where the CEO just wants something that they want. So design doesn't matter sometimes. So you're getting this feedback on design, but I think on that note, it's sometime it plays even further into what we're suggesting that people do in their RFPs. Stop rushing to design, stop voting based on design, and make companies take you through a process. Make them learn your pain points, make them explain their solutions to your pain points, get references on them, talk to customers about them, so you can really learn who these people are bidding on your business and are you finding them fit? Because at the end of the day, the companies that have the most success with trade shows, events, brand activations are companies that have long-standing partnerships. People that figure them out, make adjustments year by year. And at the end of the day, one subjective design after a 60-minute call or sometimes no call, you're taking an entire company, sometimes hundreds of people, or it could be 20 people, whatever the company that exhibit house size is. And you're putting in the ball in the court of one designer that they're using who could be a freelance designer. They could not even work for the company. And you're putting your eggs in the basket of what that designer is going to visually show you after a couple conversations. It's not saying design's not important, but I don't think it's the most important thing. And I think you can get there, and you can, if you're working with someone you like, you can always relay your frustration with design. Say, hey, I'd love for you to go get somebody else to go visually look at this and take care of it. And yeah, I think it's a leading driver in a lot of things when it shouldn't be.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Nail on the head.
It's interesting. And I don't want to like downplay it, right? But it's just all the years of doing this is, I know design is important. It does. It sells.
Yeah.
There's times where you have a couple conversations, you develop rapport. Hopefully you're building trust. You're answering their questions. And then you show them something and you're like, hey, they're like, oh God, this is it. There's no better feeling being an exhibit house or an event like there's no better feeling than that. When you visually show somebody something and they melt and they're like, this is amazing. There is no better feeling. It's a great feeling. But I think there comes a price for putting too much weight in that bucket when you're first looking for somebody. You know, when you're first looking for that partnership, I cannot stress enough what I think, how important process truly is. Any other examples from RFPs? I like that one that you said. Hey, you have any other examples of RFPs, maybe something that frustrated you or that you just kind of like thought wasn't really done well, or maybe not giving the buyer going out to RFP the best chances at success?
Yeah. So I had another interesting one this year too, that we ended, we'll all get there. But so we talked to them, big company, I think they do like 3 or 4 big shows a year. And they were pretty vague on like, emails. They wanted to jump on a call, which is completely fine. I got the basics of information, how many shows, when they're looking to change partners and everything like that. And then long story short, get on a call with them. And they were basically just going out to an RFP for design only. So their current partner that they work with is not giving them enough creativity or different designs back. And so they're going out to other exhibit houses solely for just design, with giving, like, they're not leaving their current partner. So their current partner would take over the booth after you've designed it. They did say that they would give the other, or like the new exhibit houses, a chance to build it if the price was right. But then the incumbent would take over all the logistics, because they've been working with them for like 20 years and they totally understand all the ins and outs of hotels and, everything like that. And, I explained to them, most places should, right? A good exhibit house that's been around that, would be running a larger program like that should know how to do the ins and outs of a hotel and logistics. And,
yes, they should.
It doesn't really matter what your industry is, what your hotel is, if it's in Chicago, Long Beach, Vegas, wherever it is, like they all pretty much run the same. They do. And
or you have to figure it out.
Or you just figure it out. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, but that, it was just, to me, it was just very interesting that they were like, we're not getting enough creativity from our current people. But we don't want to leave them, but they're going to bid the design that you do for builds, and so are you, but you could build it, but they're going to get all the business at the end of the day. We did not, go forward with it as Rockway. We want to work with people, build long-term relationships, and that's just not, we're not going to just design to design.
Who would?
I know. And I'm sure people did. So
they're looking for a design firm. They're looking for a company that only does design. And then you got to find one that only does trade show or event design. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So that, to me, I think how it could have gone better, right? Like you just said, like if I was them, like one, I hope that they're having frank conversations with their current person. Like, hey, we really like you guys. Like, to your point earlier, like who else do you have on staff? Like I know the current company they're working with, they must have multiple people. So how are they not getting what they need from them? Like having frank conversations with people, like, we want to work with you guys. Clearly they do. So like we need this to be better though. So then like that company should have just maybe, gotten more, stepped up or whatever it is, but then they should have gone to like a marketing, agency. If they have marketing agency internally, like they need to adjust a design portion of it, because as other exhibit houses, when you hear that, you're like, oh, well, we want all of your business. So or get a shot at it at least.
Yeah. Your example there, it's an interesting one, but I think it's so common in the trade show industry. These just oddities of what people need, lack standard process procedure, right? What's interesting about that is, I had Aaron Kaufman on the show. The guy is the president of Fifth Element. And he talks about the events industry, just in general, the whole scope of it from a production standpoint. He does like galas and big events, whereas we do trade shows and more corporate event in that space. Yeah. And he said it's a race to the bottom. That deal right there is what he's talking about. It becomes a race to the bottom, right? Because you're saying, hey, okay, come in and design me something. The question is, are you willing to pay for my design?
Yeah.
Because if I'm only doing design work, I'm charging you $250, $300 plus an hour for my time, for our designer's time, because you can't get it from the full service company that you're working with. Part of the appeal of a trade show exhibit house is that it's full service, right? So are you willing to pay for that design? If so, God bless, go out, go ahead, go say, hey, we're willing to pay for design, we'll pay anything you want, but don't dangle the carrot and say, oh, well, if we like your design, then we're going to let you give us a number and we're going to hope that it's lower. And then we're going to go back to our incumbent and tell them it's lower. It's bullshit. It's a race to the bottom. And it's what Aaron said that really opened my eyes is he's like, a lot of companies in the trade show and event space, they're bidding per project. They are not an agency of record. Agency of record means that you have a contract, you have an MSA, right? You have this partnership, you're doing all this work. And he talked about with his company, he charges for project management. He's not billing, he's not making a killing on the production of the event. He's making his money on the stuff that matters, because anybody can produce an event. Table throws, lighting, chairs. It's the same thing for trade show. I mean, how many jokers are building trade show booths? You know what I mean? But what matters is the process they take you through, the design work they do, the project management, the expectation setting. And like, they're not asking for any of that. That's not a part of this deal. So it just reminds me of what he's saying that goes on in our industry. You know, I was just thinking about, I wrote this down as we were talking, as you were talking, because I'm thinking about like, if I was in the shoes of this RFP, which is, you know, kind of where we've wandered, I think we've gotten a little off, but we're wandering down this path, is like, I'm thinking to myself, like a traditional RFP, I feel like you're rolling the dice. You're just taking kind of like a shotgun and shooting it and hoping that someone comes to the table and you hopefully end up liking them. I'd be telling people like, stop rolling the dice, like improve your own odds of ending up. I mean, what do you want to go to RFP every 2-3 years? It's a freaking headache.
Yeah.
The headache, putting the document together, going to your stakeholders, bringing back proposals, designs, new, company going to the show, worried, are they going to execute? Like, it's a headache. Why not improve your odds by doing some of the things that we're saying, doing your homework, doing your research, making them take you through a process, bidding it out to less companies, but better companies. This way you feel like you have a fighting chance of really gaining a really strong partner. And then the second thing that I thought as you were talking was like, what do you know that I don't know?
Yes.
You know, like I would be asking people that, like, what are we not doing that like maybe you're doing for other customers? I mean, we've had this happen before. Both ways we've had it happen to us, where we tell somebody something we did for, they're like, oh shit, that's great.
Yeah.
We want that. And then we've had people say something where they were like, oh, well, we were doing this with what's their names. And we're like, damn, that's smart. That's really good. You know what I mean? Like, oh, that's cool that they were doing that. So I think you should be trying to ask that in your RFP process. I mean, why, what do you know that I don't?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Or like, people do ask like what's trending right now. Right. And I think it needs to be, like that's kind of on that same realm. Cause right. It's like if an exhibit company is not helping you elevate like your experience there, or like coming up with different ideas, like, hey, let's change this. Hey, I saw this really cool. And even if like it never bites, like at least you're like getting someone to like show you different things. Right. Cause I think like the worst thing could be if like, if you're not giving them different ideas, right? And maybe it goes back to that RFP example I just talked about, but like if you're not providing different ideas or different things that you've seen or that your designers have seen that they're sending you so you can talk about it to people, like you're going to go get it somewhere else. Like if you're not giving it to me, I'm going to go find it like at a different company, because people, are wanting it. It's valuable. Like, your business, someone will take it and help you get there. So yeah. And I think like to your point, like
that's true.
You don't have to do whatever, like, the standard one, make it your own. Like it all goes back to like,
make it your
why
own.
are you going out to bid? Right. Or if like you're given an RFP, how can you talk to whoever internally that you need to maybe change it or like come up with an idea like, hey, I'll run through this, but like, I want to make sure that like, the communication, the process is very important. And that's also a deciding factor. because, you could say like, I don't feel like I'll be successful at my job and I don't want to have like a failure conversation with you. If we don't based on the communication process as well. So going back and, if you have to do a standard one, fine, but make sure you kind of, at least ask and try to get like what you feel like you need out of it as well.
I love that. It's really good. Let's wrap this up, but let's recap a little bit. Let's kind of recap. I think one of the things that we're saying, at least one of my overarching messages, is like, if you are going out to RFP for trade show, for event, for brand activation work, whatever it may be, you have to know why. Why are you doing this? What's important to you? Why are you making a switch? Or is it that you're just starting? And then, so what's your why? What's important? What are you trying to accomplish? You want somebody to take you there after you partner with them. So what I would do is, if you've been given an old RFP template, or you've grabbed the one that you've used in the past, know why you're doing it first. Then take a look at the RFP template and say, is this going to get me there? Is this process going to get me in a better place 90 days from now? And I think it's not saying that the RFP process is shit, because then the idea of an RFP is fine, right? It's capitalism. It's competitive. You got to go see who's got what. Make people move and shake. Make them take you through process. Make them show you who they are and give you the right to select where your hard-earned dollars go. But that's like my overarching thing is these old school RFP ways of doing things the best way? I think we challenged a lot of that here, and I hope people take that with them. I think the other thing we talked about was design, right? Is stop the committee decisions based on a design. Any kind of like last thoughts on you, Mollie, on where you think after this conversation, what's important, what you would want to leave people with?
Yeah. I mean, just setting yourself up for, the success and not being overwhelmed in the process. Like we talked about, it is a long, lengthy process. It can be.
Yeah.
So how are you going to be able to succeed as your job, look like the hero to everybody else when it's showtime, it's on there, right? Show open, like, it's stressful no matter what, but like make sure that, at the end of the day, when you're there, that you feel like you did everything you could. So, but that all starts in the beginning by how you're setting yourself up and planning and running through the whole process.
I also think I'll just close. I'll close with this, right? Is that, and we touched on this in the first episode. It's that everybody wants to work with good vendors, good partners, a good company. So if you're going out to RFP, part of the purpose of, solving your problems, going to achieve bigger, better things. The other part is you want a badass partner. You want to tell people like, we have the best trade show event partner ever. Like they crush it for us. Like you want that in all of your partners. Not always possible, but if that is the case, then it puts this emphasis on how you do your RFP process, right? It should put an emphasis on, if you take them through that old model, controlling it, tons of vendor partners, people bidding in, 15 people. I promise you this, you will lose the best partners. Many times, a lot of the best companies will walk away and say, hey, sorry, this RFP is just not for us. Right. And I think you're kind of narrowing down the field too much and being a little too hopeful. Whereas if you do your process a little differently, if you engage with more people, do your research with more people, let companies know, hey, like we sought you out. Yes, you're bidding against 5 people. You will bid against 5. We sought them out too. But I think it just gives you this elevated status walking into the discussion, and you're going to work with a premium company, and you have way better chance of having them bring you real results, develop a real partnership for long-term success. So
yeah, nice.
All right, Mollie, part 2. Thanks for showing up. That was great. Very enjoyable. Did you have a good time?
I did. Yeah. No, I think that I like this one more, actually, because we kind of went through more of like the thoughts. The other one was great. I like this one. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody who's listening. That's a wrap. Another episode of Event Marketing Redefined. Can't wait for you to show up to the live show, have you the next episode, whatever it may be. We will catch you next time. Thanks for tuning in.